think the coaching changeover is affecting some of the recruits? The early guys signed, but now is this a tactic do you think is being used by these other coaches, saying, look, you're going to go in, the coordinator's only going to be there for a year or 2 years, they're gone. Look at the history of the last 4 or 5 years, and Nick Saban, there's been so much turnover. Have you heard that on the recruiting trail? Have you heard recruits talking about coaches saying that?
Yeah, we certainly have heard that, and I think Alabama's done a good job of kind of weathering that storm with a few recruits. Some may end up going elsewhere, but I think we've heard Clay Webb. That was a kid that I think he was told, hey, listen, you go to Alabama, you're the possibility you may have 2 or 3 offensive line coaches, during your time at Alabama, and I think that's something that a lot of other schools use when they're recruiting, recruiting against Alabama and Nick Saban. But the guys that they've brought in, I think can help, land some of these last few recruits as well.
Again, Andrew Bone from BamaInsider.com, part of the Rivals Network. You tweeted out about 2 hours ago, is Texas commit Javon Shepard on FlipWatch? And again, you can get the latest at Andrew Bone or Andrew J. Bone. Tell us about this. Kind of what are you seeing, and you think there may be a chance for him to commit to Alabama?
Well, on December 19th, when Alabama signed 5 offensive linemen, I told everybody, I said, they're done. They're not going to go after any more offensive linemen, even though Darnell Wright, 5-star offensive tackle out of West Virginia, was one of the names that had been on Alabama's recruiting board for a very long time. I'd said, they were pretty much done. They're not really going to recruit him that heavily anymore, which they haven't, but all of a sudden, over the course of the last 2-3 weeks, their interest in Javon Shepard kind of picked up out of Houston, Texas. Jeff Banks, the assistant coach, been recruiting him for Alabama. Nick Saban having an in-home visit tonight with him. He did visit Alabama this past weekend. He's committed to Texas, but a lot of people think he may end up flipping. Texas A&M's kind of been the favorite for him in terms of, if he were to flip, that was the school that he was going to go to. But all of a sudden, Alabama's in it, and they would take his commitment, which is kind of crazy to me because they already have 5 offensive linemen. There's some other positions that are, kind of more important right now in my opinion, but they really like this kid a lot. If he wanted to commit, he can. I think he ends up staying in the state of Texas, either sticks with Texas. He's going there this weekend for an official visit, or possibly flips to A&M. But big visit today with Nick Saban, so you never know how that visit may go, and if that may completely change things for him.
I think it's 8 of the last 9 years that Alabama has had the consensus #1 recruiting class in the country. Just very basic question for you. What makes Nick Saban such a good recruiter? How's he been able to do this?
Well, winning helps. Being able to, compete and, for national championships every single year, SEC championships, consistently in the playoffs. You look at all the first-round NFL draft picks. You look at the guys who have so much success in the pros, and, I think somebody put out a story. It was somebody on Rivals the other day put out a story about which programs produce the best with the 5-star kids that they sign, and it's Alabama by a landslide. I mean, there's 1 or 2 guys over the course of the last probably 7 to 8 years, maybe 10, that have busted that were 5-stars at Alabama, but pretty much all the other 5-stars that go to Alabama end up doing great things. Your Jonathan Allens, your Minka Fitzpatrick's, Reuben Foster's, so on and so on. Jerry Jeudy, Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones. I mean, the list goes on and on. Those 5-stars pan out. So other 5-stars throughout the country, they want to go to a program that they know is going to push them and develop them. And I think with Alabama being able to, play in different parts of the country as well, whether that's, playing in Atlanta at the beginning of the season, playing in Atlanta at the end of the season, playing in Dallas or Orlando, obviously kids want to go, they want to go to top programs, but, seeing the fans in their communities and stuff like that, I think that always helps, because I remember a few years ago, I'd say it was probably 2011, 2010, I had a high school coach in the state of California tell me, they said, Alabama's becoming a bigger deal out in California because of when Alabama played in the national championship. All these kids out here saw all the fans from Alabama that came out here to support them, and they were a lot of the top kids in Los Angeles. They were just blown away by all the Alabama fans, so they started watching them a little bit more, and I think that helps every single year.
When you talk to recruits, you talk to high school coaches, is there one thing that distinguishes Nick Saban when he's in the living room of the family, when he's doing an in-home visit? Is there some distinguishing factor that sort of puts him at another level as opposed to other guys who are known as really good recruiters?
Well, I don't think he's a used car salesman when he walks in there. I don't think he's selling them, false hope. I think he's going in there and being straight up honest with them. He's not telling them, "Hey, you need to come to Alabama because you're going to start from day one." He's telling them, "You need to come to Alabama because we can help develop you as a man. We can help develop you as a football player. And if you're good enough, you can play." I'm not promising you anything. And I think a lot of other schools that compete against Alabama, and I'm not saying all of them do, but there are some out there that are, they're recruiting. They're not recruiting their school for their school. They're recruiting against Alabama. They're telling kids all the reasons why they don't need to go to Alabama instead of all the reasons why they need to come to their school. So, Nick Saban and his coaching staff, I think they do a great job of selling Alabama 100% of the time. Instead, and then Alabama's a pretty easy program to sell these days, but they continue to sell their program rather than talk bad about other schools or say anything about any other programs.
Is Coach Saban's age becoming more and more of an issue on the recruiting trail? Rival coaches using that against them, against Alabama, suggesting that, hey, Coach Saban may not be there when you graduate.
I think there's no doubt about that, and I'm sure other college coaches will say he's talking about going to the NFL. He's going to eventually go to the NFL one day or stuff like that, and there's just there's always things that are going to be put out there that that other schools are going to use, and the age I think is a factor, but I think that's why Nick Saban continues to come out and say that he's not going to retire anytime soon because he has no idea what he would do if he retired. So I think he's going to continue to coach until he starts to fall off a little bit, and he hadn't really fallen off that much lately.
All right, as far as just any other guys flipping wise or guys that you think Alabama's got a shot at that's kind of been kind of out there, or maybe guys you think that are or anybody that's committed, do you think may flip away from Alabama?
Well, Alabama has 4 guys that are on the commitment board that did not sign in December, and 2 of those guys I think end up sticking with Alabama. Keelan Robinson, the 4-star running back out of DC, and Byron Young, the 4-star defensive lineman out of Mississippi. Now, Byron is going to take an official visit to LSU this weekend, so it's something that we're all kind of keeping an eye on because LSU is going to try to flip him. But Chris Bogle, who committed to Alabama over Miami on January the 5th. I think there's a chance that he could end up flipping to Miami. He visited Florida this past weekend, so I think you got to kind of watch out for those 2 schools. Christian Williams out of Daphne, he's still on the Alabama commitment board, but just don't expect him to sign with Alabama. I think when Alabama signed 5 defensive backs in December, I think they were pretty much done. He hasn't taken an official visit to Alabama. He's not going to take one to Alabama, so I kind of expect him to end up at LSU. Now, where are things going to go with the rest of this recruiting class? We talked about Javon Shepard. We talked about Brett Seether. Some of the most important guys remain on the defensive side of the ball. You look at the defensive line position. I mentioned Byron Young. They want to hold on to him, but can they get Ishmael Sopsher, the Rivals 100 defensive lineman out of Louisiana? I think as of right now, Alabama's in the driver's seat, but he's going to LSU this weekend. In-state kid. He's Ed Orgeron's most important target. He's got a great relationship with Coach O. You have to watch that, and you just never know what may happen over the course of that weekend and where his head's at after that weekend leading up to signing day. But as of right now, really like Alabama's chances. Linebacker-wise, Henry Tola took an official visit to Alabama this past weekend. Nick Saban's going to have an in-home with him tomorrow on Thursday. So I think Alabama can lock it up with him. Even though Tosh Lapoy left and that was his area recruiting coach, I think Alabama's done a good enough job since he left to be able to get him back in. And I think Henry Tola ends up at Alabama. One other guy that I'm really kind of keeping an eye on over the course of the next week is Jerrion Ely, Rivals 100 running back out of Jackson, Jackson, Mississippi. Alabama had an in-home visit with him last week. He decided to set up an official visit for this weekend. He's a 2-sport star, so could end up getting drafted in baseball. But Charles Huff, the running backs coach, heavily recruited him for Mississippi State, and I think that's a big reason why he's coming in for the official visit next weekend or this weekend. I'm told that Alabama would take his commitment. So that would be 3 running backs in the recruiting class. But we'll see what happens. But I would definitely keep an eye on Jerry Ely over the course of the next week.
All right, so the 28 or 30. You think they get to 30?
It might, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I would have never guessed that they would go over 28, but it certainly it's starting to look that way with the guys that they still got out there that I think that they can land. So I think 29 is probably a safe number. It might get to 30, but I'd say 29 right now.
Do you think some of the guys coming in influence that a little bit as far as, hey, I've been recruiting this kid. I don't know if you guys really looked at him that. I mean, do they come in and bring in, or do you think that they already know about the kids that they're recruiting? You know what I'm saying? Like maybe say, hey, I've kind of found a diamond in the rough. I think this kid we ought to go after, or look to at least try to get him here with us through a blue shirt or something.
Yeah, well, I think with Jerry Ely, Alabama wasn't going to sign him or push for him, and then all of a sudden Charles Huff comes over,
right,
and now they're starting to push for him a little bit more. I think with with some of the guys who are committed, I think it helps. Byron Young, who a lot of people thought that Mississippi State had a good chance to flip him. Well, Mississippi State's defensive line coach, Brian Baker, now at Alabama, I think that kind of locks up Byron Young. So with him coming over, I think that helps. Helps with even some of the guys who are committed.
All right, my man. Always great stuff. Andrew Bone joining us, BamaInsider.com. That's BamaInsider.com, a network of Rivals.com. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah.